Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome to the GMB channel. Hope you will enjoy our video. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Here is the news title. Fury as labor crime review. Chief says jailing criminals longer, fails victims. Former Conservative Justice Secretary David Gauke, who is in April widely expected to call for more community sentences, said politicians have operated in a vacuum and repeatedly called for more to be locked up. The man leading Labor's sentencing review has sensationally claimed jailing more criminals for longer fails victims. Former Conservative Justice Secretary David Gauke, who is in April widely expected to call for more community sentences, said politicians have operated in a vacuum and repeatedly called for more to be locked up. Mr. Gauke has warned the public of a fundamental shift in sentencing, adding that justice chiefs have previously believed the only form of punishment that counts is imprisonment. It is Labor's clearest sign yet that it is softening its approach. As Mr. Gauke added, prison is not the only form of punishment. Former Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick said, those on remand awaiting trial, plus foreign national offenders, make up roughly a third of the prison population. That's far too high. Labor should be deporting foreign nationals and expanding court capacity instead of plotting to abolish short sentences. A shocking section of the report revealed how Mr. Gauke has been told, crime makes up a disproportionate amount of news and social media reporting. The Lord Bishop of Gloucester added in his evidence that this distorts public perception of the incidence of crime and the safety of our streets. The review by Mr. Gauke has so far found that an over-reliance on a tough-on-crime narrative and belief that longer incarceration is the only effective means of punishment has left the system overwhelmed and ineffective. The report, published overnight, claimed sentencing decisions have been driven by societal views and a lack of public understanding which is influenced by the media and political desire to win votes without aligning changes to the purposes of sentencing. Justice chiefs have been grappling to avoid a law and order crisis behind bars. Prisons last year had just 80 cells left, meaning police could have had to stop arresting offenders. Some 1,750 convicts were released under emergency measures to ease the overcrowding crisis behind bars. Criminals were let out after 40% of their sentence, rather than halfway through, in a desperate bid to prevent the system spiraling out of control. Making the case against longer sentences, the review said, despite the focus on longer sentences, the literature highlights that longer sentences do not necessarily encourage deterrence or better rehabilitation. For some offenders, longer prison terms increase their likelihood of reoffending. In fact, the evidence suggests that interventions and support during and after a sentence are arguably more important in reducing reoffending. It added, as part of this fundamental shift, this review also provides an opportunity to reconsider the fundamental principles around notions of punishment. The Sentencing Council acknowledges that there are many aspects of criminal justice that offenders experience as punitive, even in the absence of sentences with deterrent intentions. For instance, the Sentencing Council notes that there is limited research into offender experiences of fines and their perceived punitiveness. Chair of the Independent Sentencing Review, David Gauke said, last year we were confronted with the consequences of decades of haphazard policymaking and underinvestment in the criminal justice system, bringing it to the brink of collapse. For too long, politicians have operated in a vacuum, increasing sentencing for individual crimes without considering the knock-on impact on the wider system. It is time to accept this does not deliver justice for victims. It fails them. Gauke added, it is clear that in order to address the capacity issues we face, we must have an honest conversation about who we send to prison and for how long. Punishment will always be a central aim of the criminal justice system, but it is not the only aim, and prison is not the only form of punishment. Ministry of Justice sources said it is too early to indicate what changes Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood will agree to following Mr. Gauke's review. The National Audit Office, NAO, has said current prison expansion plans are insufficient to meet future demand, amid a projected shortage of 12,400 prison places by the end of 2027, with costs expected to be at least $4 billion higher than initially also estimated. Said the then government's 2021 pledge to create an extra 20,000 cells spaces by building more prisons, temporary wings, and refurbishing existing cell blocks is now not expected to be met until 2031, around 5 years later than promised. As of September, a third, 6,518 of the 20,000 had been made available, according to the NAO. Reasons behind delays include unrealistic timelines and overestimating the ability to get planning permission for 3 out of the 6 new prisons due to be built. The plans are now expected to cost between $9.4 billion and $10.1 billion, least $4.2 billion more than 2021 estimates amid a rise in construction prices. Here's another news, the report said. Migration madness as lefty lawyers threaten block on border controls. Exclusive. The move was branded a smokescreen that will make it easier for those who ignored our laws to challenge this position. Left-wing lawyers will launch a barrage of human rights claims against Labor's new immigration rules, critics warned. The Home Office issued new guidance this week suggesting migrants will normally be refused the right to remain if they entered the UK illegally. It followed criticism that the border security, asylum and immigration bill created a path to citizenship for small boat arrivals because it repealed key pieces of legislation that prevented Channel migrants from settling here or becoming British citizens. But the move was branded a smokescreen that will make it easier for those who ignored our laws to challenge this position. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said, Labor's proposed changes to the border are not worth the paper they're written on if they press ahead with their scheme to repeal the Illegal Migration Act. Doing so will leave them wide open to legal challenges by lefty activist lawyers, many of whom are friends of Keir Starmer, and one of whom he made his Attorney General. That's why our proposed legislative changes are so important. It's about rewiring the system completely, not window dressing a bad system, which is all Labor's changes do. Robert Bates, research director at the Center for Migration Control, said, British citizenship is a privilege, not a right. Without a clear policy that says illegal migrants can never become British citizens, we will inevitably see human rights lawyers launching a barrage of challenges to these rules. The sigh. Answer is straightforwardly that anyone who enters the country without permission is removed. Left-wing staff in the Home Office are also likely to take advantage of this loose guidance to make it meet their own open borders agenda. Far too much discretion remains in the hands of civil servants who seem to act without a hint of accountability. Former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster told the Daily Express, The change in guidance is nothing more than a smokescreen for the government, repealing the provisions of the Illegal Migration Act 2023, aimed at preventing those who entered our country from settling here or becoming British citizens. Switching this provision to guidance will make it easier for those who ignored our laws to challenge this position to become British citizens and likely Labour voters. The Tories are understood to be planning a series of amendments to ban Channel migrants from ever being able to claim citizenship. But a spokeswoman for the Home Secretary said, This is complete nonsense. There are long-standing rules that mean those that arrive illegally can't be granted citizenship. This government is strengthening those rules so that no one making dangerous journeys on small boats can get citizenship. The Tories' illegal Migration Act was totally unworkable, which is why so much of it, including the provisions on citizenship, were not enacted or operationalized. Returning to the same failed ideas shows the Tories learnt nothing from their catastrophic defeat in July. They fear relying on changes to immigration rules will expose the Home Office to even more human rights claims. The Good Character Guidance states that an applicant will normally be refused citizenship if they entered the UK illegally, no matter how long they have lived in the UK. It makes particular reference to those who arrived having made a dangerous journey, including those traveling by small boat or concealed in a vehicle. However, Tony Smith, the former Director General of Border Force, said ministers must bar migrants from being able to remain in the UK. He told the Daily Express, "They don't need British citizenship to get to stay here. Their ambition is simply to get into British waters, whereupon our current legal framework requires us to bring them ashore, to allow them to lodge claims for asylum, human rights, modern slavery, and so on, until or unless we are able to pass workable laws to deny them access to this process and to send them back quickly, then there is very little likelihood that many of them will ever be removed, and ultimately, they will get to stay regardless of their nationality, citizenship, or good conduct." The immigration rule changes triggered a bizarre row within Labour, with senior MP Stella Creasy claiming it would prevent Paddington Bear from settling in the UK. Ms. Creasy told BBC Radio 4's Today programme on Wednesday, "This is not about whether we offer these people refuge. These people are people who can stay here already. This is about people who are here, who are part of our over the last couple of months to work with one of my neighbors, who is a young man who fled Syria, who is now making a life here, has just got his degree, is contributing to our society, and has now got British citizenship." This process would deny that. Essentially, it would deny, well, frankly, Paddington. Paddington did the same thing. He came by an irregular route, but we gave him sanctuary, but wouldn't give him a passport. In response to criticism of her comments, Ms. Creasy subsequently posted on the X, formerly Twitter social media site, writing, "We did indeed give Paddington a passport. We also gave Sir Mo Farah a knighthood, and cheered him at the Olympics." And former Labour Home Secretary David Blunkett also attacked the plans, claiming the revised immigration rules threaten community cohesion and statelessness. Raising his concerns about the recent revision, Lord Blunkett added, "Will the Minister ask the Home Secretary to reflect on the societal and cohesion aspects of this policy, the impact on children and their right to UK citizenship, and the statelessness which would arise for individuals if their birth country refused to renew or retain their nationality? Surely this Parliament should have a say in such a big change." Responding, Home Office Minister Lord Hanson of Flint said, "He will know that the proposals today are about illegal entry to the United Kingdom and do not affect rightful citizenship applications for people who are entering the UK legally. In terms of those who are stateless and at risk of losing citizenship, for people who do qualify, there is a stateless leave provision, and they can apply for that. And children, again, will be considered sympathetically under existing Labour Crime Review Chief says jailing criminals longer fails victims. The debate surrounding the UK's criminal justice system has reignited following comments from former Conservative Justice Secretary David Gauke, who is now leading Labour's sentencing review. His assertion that lengthier prison sentences do not necessarily serve victims effectively has drawn both support and fierce criticism. Gauke's stance signals a potential shift in the approach towards crime and punishment, particularly as Labour navigates its stance on justice reform. A fundamental shift in sentencing policy? Gauke has warned of a fundamental shift in sentencing philosophy, arguing that political leaders have historically operated in a vacuum, simply increasing sentences without considering the broader impact. He criticized the over-reliance on incarceration as the primary form of punishment, pointing out that it has led to a system that is both overwhelmed and ineffective. His review suggests that sentencing policies have been shaped more by societal perception and media influence than by evidence-based approaches. This raises crucial questions about the role of political rhetoric in shaping criminal justice policies. Should sentencing decisions be driven by public sentiment, or should they be informed by research and practical outcomes? Labour's changing approach to crime and punishment. Labour's willingness to engage in a discussion about alternative sentencing marks a departure from traditional tough-on-crime narratives. While tough-on-crime policies have historically been electorally popular, Gauke's review suggests that they have not necessarily led to better outcomes for victims or society at large. Instead, he advocates for greater emphasis on rehabilitation and community-based sentences, which he argues could be more effective in reducing reoffending rates. This approach, however, is not without controversy. Critics argue that reducing the reliance on imprisonment may send the wrong message to criminals and could lead to an increase in crime rates. Former Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has taken a hard stance against the proposal, asserting that labor should instead prioritize deporting foreign national offenders and increasing court capacity rather than abolishing short prison sentences. The overcrowding crisis in prisons. One of the most pressing issues facing the UK's criminal justice system is the chronic overcrowding of prisons. The UK prison population has surged, with the National Audit Office, NAO, projecting a shortage of 12,400 prison places by the end of 2027. The government's initial 2021 pledge to create 20,000 additional prison places has been delayed, with the completion date now pushed back to 2031. The cost of the expansion has also ballooned, with estimates rising from $6 billion to between $9.4 billion and $10.1 billion due to inflation and logistical challenges. This overcrowding crisis has already led to emergency measures, including the early release of 1,750 prisoners who served just 40% of their sentence instead of the standard 50%. The review underscores the need for urgent reform to prevent further strain on an already struggling system. Does longer imprisonment deter crime? Gawk's report questions the effectiveness of longer prison sentences in deterring crime. Research cited in the review suggests that lengthier sentences do not necessarily discourage criminal behavior. Instead, evidence indicates that well-designed interventions and post-sentence support systems play a more significant role in preventing reoffending. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comment below. If you like my video, please press like button and subscribe for more. Hope I'll see you in next video.